didn't even plan to make a video again. This is literally, well, I basically recorded earlier today, finishing one video, which I'm uploading today. Well, I'm gonna basically premiere it for tomorrow. I think it's quite late already. Then I made another video, artificial intelligence, which I'll probably also upload tomorrow. And I wasn't even planning on making another video. I was just watching something and it inspired me to make another video. And I basically already spoke about it a little bit in the one that it's basically uploading right now. You're gonna see it's the cosmic joke video. And I spoke about reflection a little bit, or I kind of used the mirror as an analogy. One sec, let me get it again. Because mirror is almost like the perfect analogy for like consciousness, because see, like, it's only the eye, only the perceiver. Like, think of it. An eye is black. Like, the eye is void. So it's like, it's dark. It's like a black hole and all the light is collapsing in. And that was literally like that. That's what a camera is. A camera doesn't really have substance. It's like, it can only capture substance. And yeah, I got inspired to make this because I was literally watching a video of Dancz. I can't lie, he's funny. Like, I can just tell this guy's crazy, but he's enlightened though. He's enlightened. Like, the average person, if they watched him, they would just think he's crazy. And he is basically crazy, but I can't say that he's not enlightened, because even this video that I was just watching, he just released. As I said, I watched so many people. But I've been slowing down. I was watching way more now, but now it's almost like I just watch some people sometimes, and it gets less and less. But now it's more like, yeah, I actually want to give back and just, like, do my own part. But yeah, this video in specific was wait, what was it? It's basically about reflections, why reflections exist. And yeah, literally everything he was saying in that video is basically everything that I was saying this whole time. He said certain times when I watch certain like enlightened people's videos, like, sometimes I judge by like when they claim they're gonna explain something, and then I'll basically have in my head, according to my own perception and experience and direct experience, I'll basically already know what I would say that is the answer to that, and then they'll basically say exactly that, and it will just be so congruent that it's uncanny. Like, there was another one as well. I watched some. I think it's Satya Yoga Institute. He's a completely different type of person to Dancz. That's why I was saying there's so many different. There's not a particular way that an enlightened person is. You could have like a really saintly, like, enlightened person, and that's really good as well. I think that's good, and you should kind of try and move towards that ideal as well. But you don't really need to be a saint to be enlightened. Like Dancz and that, like, smokes in his videos and all that. That's what I was kind of saying as well. That I do like the authenticity of it. Even he did some videos. What's it called? Sanity Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. He'll probably, I don't know, he might take them down. But those are crazy videos. He's just there going wild, doing crazy shit. like as if he's 5 years old. But I understand what he's doing. It's just complete chaos unwinding. Like, I can just tell he does it. Like, once you like get enlightened to a certain point, you genuinely don't give a fuck. Like, I wouldn't have been making these videos before, like, if I kind of gave a fuck about what people thought about, like, me. Obviously, you always will keep it to some degree as you're in the human form, but you just start to care less and less. Like, Why do you think there's some yogis in India just sitting there without a home, just on the street, dirt, just like, but they're there, enlightened, man. You know what I'm saying? That's the wise man. But yeah, he was speaking about reflections, and he literally like, I clicked the video and stopped as soon as there was one point, I think in 2 minutes in, or something, he was literally saying, oh, how the absolute or God has no limitations, and the only limitation, the only one limitation, and literally this is where in a snapshot I said in my head, like as I said, like in many other times, I knew what I would have said, and then he said exactly that, is that the only limitation that God has, even though it can do everything and it can create everything, the only thing that it can't create is something other than itself. That's why I said that everything is only the imaginary self. It can only create an imaginary other, an appearance which appears and disappears, but only the self remains always eternally. So that's its only limit. And that's why the devil and everything, or the Maya, has to be created, the oscillations, the deviations. That's why it's all an illusion, a mirage, a hallucination, because that's all it could ever be. It might seem like a limit on God, that like, so you're trying to say that God can't actually create a physical universe, but it actually can, but it can't. Like it can, but not in the way that you think. Like it can, but only through appearance. And as long as you believe it, it will be that. And to millions and billions of humans on Earth, that's the reality they live in. They actually live in that like paradigm, and that. And as I was explaining quantum mechanics, how your own brain is like a filter, and you're going to kind of reinforce back to yourself what you already believe, and kind of deny and disregard all the opposing data and so on and so forth. But yeah, literally consciousness is like a mirror. Like that's why I say in the absolute there isn't actually consciousness, and that consciousness isn't the absolute. Like at some point I thought that the consciousness is absolute, and that's like kind of what everything's made out of, and in a sense it's true, but not really. Like it's truth, absolute truth, and consciousness is the capacity for the truth itself to be aware of itself. Like, but there can't be consciousness if there's no truth first. Consciousness, in a sense, in my opinion, is secondary and codependently arising. Like there has to be something that you're seeing and someone seeing it, if you get what I'm saying, and that has to happen within the empty space of truth. Well, that has to be true for that to even happen. So, yeah, that's why we incarnate, as he's explaining in that video. And that's why we kind of incarnate into a particular form of other. And then everything else you're seeing, you're increasing your bubble, more and more perception, you're seeing more and more, and it seems like other. You think you more and more stuff that's other than you, money and fame and experiences and all of that stuff, but actually you're just collecting back yourself, just coming back more, and that's literally it. That's literally it. That's the whole game of life. So, yeah, I don't know. That was a very, very short video, but I don't know. Let me see if there's anything else. But yeah, it's just mainly like when you just actually just like literally look, like what is the color of this mirror? Obviously, there's a bit of smudges on it, and as I said in my artificial intelligence video where I use this, or the other video, wherever, like because this is a physical form. Yeah, you could say it's silver or something, but really, in essence, it has no look. You think that's black, you think that's yellow, and you think that's black. But see, like, what is the color of the mirror itself? It has no color. It has no form of its own. It just only reflects forms. So you could almost imagine consciousness, the perfect kind of analogy or word, is that consciousness is an invisible mirror. And it has no bounds. Like it's nowhere, it's everywhere. It's invisible and it's a mirror. That's basically what consciousness is. It's just truth, nothing itself, and it is just reflecting. It's just looking at itself from different angles. That's it. That's why everything is transactional. That's why everything in the relative plane reinforces each other. But in the absolute is just only the self which reinforces itself, and that's what makes it God. Like that's what makes it the absolute. Because everything else has to, like this human body has to rely on has to transact with the trees and the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, and I have to eat food, and then you get rid of stuff, carbon dioxide, you excrete, and you take in stuff, and it's just all a transaction, literally. So yeah, that was a quick one. But shout out Greg Dancz. Oh yeah, and with the Sat Yoga, there was one video I was watching, and I said he's completely different, but he's also a good teacher. And like there was one thing he was saying, like he was gonna kind of explain the whole of reality, or like a model, so to speak, of reality. And then he was like, all there is, and then before he even like drew it down or said anything, I was thinking, if he does anything other than just a dot, then it's wrong. Then he literally went there and just did that. It was like, just that. And then that's why I was like, yeah, no, this guy, he knows, like, if you get what I'm saying. Because it's just only the 0 point. It says only itself. That's it. Like, everything else is just, you know what I'm saying, an oscillation or expansion of that. And then obviously he went on to explain how there's kind of an expansion out, and a kind of a ripple effect until it kind of hits its peak boundaries. Like it keeps on going out and out like the Big Bang, and then eventually, because even though that's infinite, any form that arises, no matter how big it is, like this could be the infinitely big, like really big form with many smaller forms in it, but any form that kind of arises, even if it takes 3 trillion years or whatever, it eventually it will eventually exhaust its potential and then collapse back in. That's kind of like the Big Bang and the Big Crunch. And some people even remember how I even explained in my one of my past videos about the Shiva is kind of that which is not, and I was explaining kind of God above the order itself, the absolute one is equal to one, and in a sense that's Brahman, but also that's fine. Like no, I wouldn't say that's Brahman, but people. The whole reason why I even said that is because some people, obviously, this is just kind of a saying, but like some people even suggest that, like for example, I don't know if it's in the Upanishads or anything. I haven't read those things, but I heard, I don't know, this could be wrong or something. But the essence, you'll hear what I'm saying, is that like a lifetime of Brahman is like 300 trillion years or whatever it is, basically. Like that's kind of like one cycle of Brahman, but then see, Shiva doesn't have cycles because it's just infinite, because it's always 0 already. But then the forms that arise, there could be an insanely large form. And remember how I told you time and space and scale are all related. So the larger a form is, the longer kind of that it is, and the longer that it lasts, and so on. So you could imagine like God is, or Brahman is like the largest form. Shiva is the formless that is anchored in. Brahman is like the largest form, but even that will eventually exhaust itself, even though it might be 100 quadrillion years, but then eventually that will come and then it will collapse back. But then it will do it infinite amount of times, if you get what I'm saying. It's not that it will just happen once. No, that would be fine, man. It's infinite. So no matter how long or short the Big Bang or the Big Crunch or whatever is, like, it will just happen. It has to happen again and again and again. There's no way it just happens once, because then what caused that? It's the infinite regress problem again. So this already is just, the Big Bang just already shows that like there's no beginning. Like we're in eternity, just get it. And once you get these things, once you realize you are yourself, not your name, not this human form. This is just a form that you're incarnated in for now. This is just a vehicle, and then you will drop it, like you change your clothes, and then I don't know, like depending on your level of consciousness. As I said, I'll never be absolute or say this is exactly what will happen after death or anything. But depending on your state of consciousness or whatever, like if there's unfulfilled desires, then it does make sense. You might just reincarnate and come, so on and so forth. But if you're kind of energy, body, or soul or whatever, because even souls, I need to make another video on this. But you could kind of imagine, because at first I kind of awakened to the absolute self first, And then, like, when I kind of awakened originally, it seemed to me like there's no souls. There's just only infinite egos and just one self. And that is ultimately true. But you could also imagine that there are souls. But let me draw it like this. So to speak, like you could just imagine that's the self, like just a dot in the center. And then you could kind of imagine like, you could kind of imagine, yeah, that like for example, that's the dot, the self, and then like this string is almost like one particular soul, and then that loop might be one lifetime, that loop might be one lifetime, that loop might be one lifetime. But eventually, it'll come back to the soul. But then, see, but then at the same time, there will be many other. There'll be another soul who goes opposite and does that lifetime or whatever, and then there's one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then it starts to look a little bit like sacred geometry and all of these things. That's why all the sacred geometries are like that anyway, because it's just always itself. It's just expansion of just the one self. But then, like, obviously this looks messy now, but you could imagine that that's one soul, and then each of these loops is one lifetime, and then they die and then they come back. That's one lifetime. But see, then they are also the self, just one string. You could think of like your consciousness or your soul as just imagine just a grid, like the internet. It's just a network, almost like the mushrooms. That's why I even think like mushrooms or shrooms are like how you could get this crazy trips and consciousness from it, because it's just this ultimate grid, and it's just all nodes, and they're just taking in this information, and it's all non-localized, but it's this insane kind of grid of information, the internet. And so like it seems like, oh yeah, like the whole misconception that I would say about people, what people think about souls is that their soul is like their own in particular, and in a sense it is, but still in a sense all souls are still the self. It's just like you could imagine the self splits up into infinite different nodes and streams, and then those individual streams are going to go on their own little lifetimes, but they're also all going to come back to the self. So that's also its own lifetime. That's all just the self. That's also its own lifetime. That's also just the self. And like you could say that line in particular is one soul, and then that like loop in particular is one soul, and there's different souls, so to speak, compared to that one, but still it's all just the self. So yes, I think I am open to the idea that there are afterlife and a bardo state and reincarnation and stuff. But I also would think that there is some degree of choice of that, and as I said, with the incompleteness and desire. Um, but yeah, I do think that if you did go on the full loop, this is why I am open to thinking kind of like, for example, like what Ramana Maharshi and these lot say is that once you do get to self-realization, you just rest. Like it does really just feel like the end. Like to me, obviously, I haven't that like I'm not dead, like, but physically, so to speak. But I don't know. To me, it just feels like I kind of have a clear feeling of what it would be like to die. Like, it would just be like merging back just to the self. Like, nothing would really change. Like, only what would change is like the false appearances. That's what I'm saying, is that everyone else who's unenlightened, not self-realizers, they think that the self is like couched in this body, but it's not. Like, the body will drop, and like you'll realize the body was just on the screen of consciousness of the self. But yeah, another random one, but good one.